Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So it is now time for everybody's favorite bi-yearly tradition, and that is my updated top 50 players in the entire NHL. If you've been following me for a while, you know every single year on both January 15th and July 15th, 6 months apart, I roll out my updated top 50 players because we're about the halfway mark, a little bit more than the halfway mark in the season, and then I like to do the updated top 50 after the Stanley Cup, after free agency in the draft. So yeah, it is time for us to do our updated top 50. In this list, it is the midseason one's always extremely hard because you gotta not just evaluate this season what they're doing, but also last season has to matter a lot. The way I would kind of make my formula is like 45 to 50% is based on this season, then like 35 to 40% based on last year, because again, that's a full 82 game sample size versus like 40 to 50 or 40 to 45 this year, and then like 10 to 15% based on prior seasons. If it's like a guy that was like a monster 3 years ago, maybe I factor that in to have them still within the top 50. But yeah, we are going to go through it now. I'm going to start off by saying the players that fell out of the top 50. There's 6 players. If you follow me on Instagram, you saw that these guys are not going to be featured. Jason Robertson, a guy that was held up in last year's rankings because of that 2023 season when he had 109 points, but he finally fell off after a bit of a lackluster start. He was coming off an injury. Jacob Slavin, still think he's one of the best defensive defensemen in the entire NHL, but the offense has not quite been there, and it's not like he's chewing up monster minutes. Still a top 20 defenseman in the entire NHL. Matt Barzal, the production has just not been there from our New York Islanders. Same thing with Zach Hyman. Brad Marchand, still a very good player, but kind of has just been decreasing the last 2 to 3 seasons that now I have him outside of the top 50. And Clayton Keller, also playing at around the point per game clip, similarly to last year. It just, the 2023 season was his monster season, and the production has kind of gone down a little bit. Still, those guys were all decently considered to be in the top 50. And also, for some honorable mentions, you could easily have these guys on, and I would hear you out. Kirill Marchenko this year has been a top 50 player, but doesn't quite have the resume of prior seasons, so I didn't go with him. I could see you making arguments for Macklin Celebrini, considering the fact that he has just really hit the ground running in San Jose and has been a near point per game guy. Lucas Raymond almost made it. If he continues to go at the pace that he's going at this season, he'll definitely be on the July list. Adrian Kempe, just consistent, like 35 and 35, 40 and 40 kind of production, almost made it as well. Brandon Hagel, another guy like Raymond, if he keeps on going at the rate that he is, probably going to be on that top 50. But I finalized my list last night after the games, and we have our top 50. So without further ado, let's get into it. And I like to be a little bit spicy with my number 50 spot. I ended up going with Anthony Cirelli, not the sexiest pick considering in prior years he's only been around the 50 to 55 point center, but over the last 4 to 5 years he has been one of the best defensive centers in the entire NHL. He just didn't really have the point totals because Selke voters for some reason care about it. It's usually it's the best offensive player that also plays good defense. Not saying Barkov isn't great, but he's been awesome defensively the last couple of years, and now this season he's starting to put it together offensively. Once Stamkos is out, they need to rely on a guy like Anthony Cirelli to play more of an offensive role, and he has risen to the occasion. 17 goals, 19 assists, 36 points in 40 games. He is shooting 20%, so you can maybe say that goal total isn't exactly sustainable, but yeah, I think at this point he's a 70-point top 5 defensive center in the entire NHL, maybe top 3. In my opinion, that's a top 50 player in the entire NHL, so that might be a little bit bold, but he's number 50 for me. Next up, Filip Forsberg, a guy that is definitely relying on what he did last year, more so to still be in the top 50, considering last year was so good. He arguably should have got like some heart votes, considering he had 48 goals, 46 assists, 94 points for the Nashville Predators, basically willed them alongside Roman Josi, a guy that we're going to eventually get to, into the playoffs. And even last year, those 48 goals, it wasn't like he shot at 20% like an Anthony Cirelli is shooting right now. He only shot 13.8%. He was an absolute wagon in terms of generating opportunities. This season, it's kind of flipped on him. He's not shooting that good. He only has 11 goals, but he's shooting 7%. I think he's going to bounce back. Only has 35 points in 42 games. I think he's going to have a better back half of the season, and in my opinion, still one of the better goal-scoring wingers in the entire NHL. 48, this is going to be controversial. I still have Connor Bedard within my top 50. I think that what he's doing on a Chicago Blackhawks team that is so bad, it's so devoid of talent. He's basically been having with like Tyler Bertuzzi, Taylor Hall, Teuvo Teravainen, and Khrushchev as his wingers. And he started off very slow, 5 goals, 14 assists, 19 points in his first 26 games. But in his last 18, has 7 goals, 13 assists, and 20 points. Again, in those 18 games, he's starting to catch catch fire. He is still such a special offensive talent, just in an absolutely brutal situation. So the point totals aren't quite there like you would expect, and the defensive numbers are not good, but I still think that this guy has the skill and the talent to warrant being a top 50 player. And again, going for around like 75-point pace on that bad of a team is very impressive. Once he finally gets some serious difference makers, he's going to be putting up 40 goals, 55 assists. If he gets actual teammates around him, I think that's very realistic still as early as next season. Robert Thomas, 47th. When looking at him last year, 26 goals, 60 assists, 86 points in 82 games. This year, more of the same, 11 goals, 22 assists, 33 points in 32 games. And over the last last 4 seasons since the 2021-2022 season, he's 13th in the entire NHL in assists per game among forwards. One of the best passers in the entire NHL, a very good playmaker, and has come a decently long way in terms of defensive impact, that now he is a legit top 13 to 17 center in the entire NHL, I would argue, given his overall playmaking and defensive ability. Kopitar, speaking of defensive ability, Kopitar is still a beast. Started out this season insane, looking like he was maybe trending towards the top 40, having 37 points in his first 32 games. He has slowed down a little bit. He's at 40 and 41 right now. But yeah, about as reliable as it gets in terms of a two-way center. Might be a Selke finalist this year, as well as hovering around point per game. That's going to get you in the top 50. The prior years, he was still like 70 points great defensively, but it's looking like he's getting the offensive mojo back late in his career. Scheifele, number 45. I snubbed him in prior lists, people screaming that he should be on this list, and this time around, it is definitely undeniable that he probably should be on the list. 25 goals, 25 assists, 50 points in 44 games this year. He's on pace for like 47 goal, 47 assist pace right now. That is absolutely insane. The Winnipeg Jets are a wagon. He's not very good defensively. That's why he's not like top 40 with that kind of production. But Mark Scheifele, very good number 1 center. Charlie McAvoy falls a decent amount to number 44, and it's not just because the offense, which the offense is pretty bad this year, only 20 points in 45 games. But when you look at this guy from like 2019 to 2022, he was one of the best lockdown defensemen in the entire NHL. But since assuming more of that number 1 role, the defensive numbers have fallen off a decent amount in the last 2 to 3 years. So he's kind of been falling a decent amount. And when the offense kind of completely falls out, he's responsible for being that number 1 power play quarterback. We thought that that's what he was going to be and turn into and develop. That has not been the case. The Boston Bruins power play has been an absolute shit show as a result. I still think Charlie McAvoy is a very good player, but yeah, he's been around like the mid-20s in the recent top 50s of late. But I think you got to have him fall off a little bit, considering he has not really shown it the last year and a half or so. As a result, he's still at a respectable 44th, but he does fall a decent amount. 43rd, Dylan Strome. Some people might say recency bias with this. I would argue that last year he had 67 points on a pretty bad Washington Capitals team and 65 points the year prior. Above a point per game this season. Great playmaker, great passer. Nicholas Backstrom 2.0, as they say, as well as being very good defensively. It's not like he's just riding Ovechkin's coattails. He is a damn good player in his own right and looking like he's finally putting it together. And the Washington Capitals are finally a very good team with Dylan Strome. As a result, he gets a respectable spot at 43rd. 42nd, Elias Pettersson. Now, similarly to a guy like Jason Robertson, you can argue that he does not deserve to be on this list, considering the last year or so, basically since he signed like his contract, he hasn't really been a top 50 player. I'm still going to say if JT Miller ends up getting traded, I would expect Pettersson to turn it around when this guy is locked in and healthy. He was also dealing with an injury in the back half of last year. He's a 95 to 100 point two-way Selke level center. I know I'm betting on the potential here, not what has happened in the last year, but I'm not quite ready to throw him outside of my top 50 players. Last year, he still had like 88, 89 points. I'm keeping Pettersson in there for now. Speaking of another Canuck at 41, JT Miller, another case of this, 103 points last year, was within my top 30. This year, not playing nearly as good, especially not goal scoring as well. 8 goals in 32 games right now. He does still have 29 points, but yeah, it's been a little bit shaky for JT Miller. He obviously had his leave of absence. I don't know what's going to happen with him and Pettersson, but they might have to split for the betterment of the Canucks and for themselves, considering last year and in prior years they have been such great players, but this year it has definitely been concerning, and as a result, they slip a decent amount. 40, Brady Krug, the ideal modern physical power forward that, although the auto centers haven't made the playoffs, we've seen with Matthew Tkachuk that you really want come playoff time this season. Yet again, going for around like 35 goals, 40 assists, 75 points, 18 goals, 20 assists, 38 points in 42 games. Beats the shit out of you, throws like 3.5, 4 hits per game, and is very skilled, damn good player. 39, Tim Stützle, back-to-back as well. We went Canucks. We're going with Senators. Hasn't quite got him back to that 2023 form where he was like a top 30 player, top 25 player that season. But yet again, above a point per game as of right now. 6'1", has gotten a lot more physical in recent years, as well as just better defensively. Legit number one center in the entire NHL. I understand if people have him lower. I have him in at 39th, considering basically since that 2023 season, if you combine all that, top 40 players seems about fair for Tim Stützle. Nick Suzuki at 38. Last year, monster season. Probably like a top 35, top 30 player in the NHL last year with 33 goals, 44 assists, 77 points, and great defensively. The defensive numbers have kind of fallen off, but also Montreal has not been that good defensively. And he's yet again hovering around point per game, proving himself to be a legit number one center. Maybe not a high-end guy that you win a Stanley Cup with, But if you surround him with wingers that I think he's going to have very soon, and Ivan Demidov, as well as Cole Caulfield, that could be an honorable mention for this kind of list. Nick Suzuki, damn good hockey player, 38th overall. 37th, this might be a little bit controversial. I'm still sticking with Evan Bouchard in this range. Started off very slow, 1 point in his first 6 games. Since then, 31 points in his last 36. Last year, had a no doubt top 5 defenseman season in the entire NHL, probably top 25 player with 81 points and a historic offensive playoff run for the Edmonton Oilers. He's not solely a McDavid or Draisaitl merchant. His numbers with them on and off the ice are good regardless. It's not like they massively fall off. And you could argue he's more so of like a Matthias Ekholm merchant, if anything, but I don't think he's a merchant of anything. I think that he is a very good offensive defenseman, that when you give him a veteran defensive defenseman, he can put up absolutely insane results like he has the last year and a half for the Edmonton Oilers, and as a result, I have him at number 37, outside of the top. I think he's outside of the top 7 defensemen, might be my number 8 or number 9 defenseman right now. I like some of the other defensemen more, but Evan Bouchard, very good. Travis Konecny at 36th. He was not on the list last year. I think he was like the last honorable mention. Like I would have had him at 52nd or 51st or 52nd. He definitely jumps into the top 50 and jumps pretty high, considering the fact 2 years ago, 31 goals, 30 assists, 61 points in 60 games. Monster season. Last year on a Philadelphia Flyers team that wasn't that impressive offensively, 33 goals, 35 assists, 68 points in 76 games. This year, 20 goals, 30 assists, 50 points in 44 games. He has been kind of like a one-man offense in Philadelphia the last couple of years with like the ghost of Sean Couturier, or like the shell of himself of Sean Couturier as his main center. And yeah, he's just been great offensively, very skilled, very good shot, as evident the fact that he's been hovering around like 35 goal pace the last 3 years. As a result, he gets a spot in the top 40. Next up, we got Alexander Ovechkin. It is time for Ovi. When looking at Ovi, basically since last year, January 1st of 2024, he's been like a top 30, top 25 player in the entire NHL, because he started out very slow last year, had like 5 goals in his first 35 games, but in the last 40 games of last season, 25 goals, 20 assists, 45 points. And then when looking at him this year, 20 goals, 12 assists, 32 points in 27 games. So yeah, he looks like his old self. Maybe fell off at the start of last season, but he is fully back now, and he's a top 40 player. I got to respect that. Even though the defense, the reason why he's not higher is because, yeah, he still doesn't really play a lot of defense, doesn't give a shit in his own end. But yeah, when you're scoring at 50-plus goal pace, I got to throw you within the top 40. Jesper Bratt, number 34. Last year, career season, 83 points. We thought, oh, maybe this is just Bratt, a little bit over a point per game. He takes it to another level this year, 51 points in 45 games. Looks like he's going to be in the high 80s. One of the best skaters in the entire NHL, and as a result, one of the best players in transition in the entire NHL. Has a sneaky good shot, as well as just good playmaking abilities and good instincts. And yeah, 34th overall, the New Jersey Devil lands. 33rd, Dylan Larkin, a guy, even though I get called a Wings hater, I really really love Dylan Larkin. Not quite killing it this year with 18 goals and 19 assists, 37 points in 42 games. But the last 3 seasons before that, he's around the 35 goal, 45 assist, 80-point guy. That's kind of what he's on pace for right now. And he's been playing better of late. Very good defensively, physical guy. I'm a big defender of Dylan Larkin. And as a result, he's at 33rd. Niko Heer, 32nd. Insane start to the season. People were saying he should have won or he was like the Hart favorite. I never really bought into that. But he had 10 goals in 13 games to start the season. Has slowed down a little bit. But yeah, this guy was a Selke runner-up in 2023. Last year was a little bit of a down year defensively, but he's back to playing elite two-way hockey. Last 3 seasons, he's put up 32 goal, 44 assists, 76-point pace. Very good two-way number 1 center. Tage Thompson, in my opinion, this is where, this is a massive point in the list. I think above this, there's a different tier. Tage Thompson falls into that tier, you know what I'm saying? Like 32 through 50, or in the honorable mentions, you can argue. I think Tage Thompson takes it up here, considering the fact that he's got his goal-scoring touch, 19 goals and 38 games back. He's been so good defensively this season and last season after 2023, having those monster numbers, 47 goals, 47 assists, 94 points, but the defense wasn't really there. He's really rounded out his game to be this kind of unicorn guy, and as a result, he checks in at 31st. Again, the jump to 32nd or 31st, I know it's a random number, but in my opinion, my top 33, I would defend those guys being within the top 31. Gensel up next. He's just been a consistent 40-40 kind of guy for Pittsburgh with Sidney Crosby. Comes to Tampa Bay, more of the same, 21 goals, 21 assists, 42 points, 40 games right now. It is basically the exact same level of production. Amazing goal scorer and perfect in Tampa Bay, as we all kind of expected. Josh Morrissey, 29th, 2.5 years now of this guy being pretty easily a top 10 defenseman in the entire NHL. Over the last 2.5 seasons, a 74-point pace. This year, more of the same, 39 points in 44 games. That 2023 year was kind of all offense. He's rounded out his game a decent amount for the Winnipeg Jets, and that's why the Winnipeg Jets the last year and a half have been one of the best teams in the entire NHL, at least in the regular season. Zach Werenski, 28th. I had him 47th in my summer list. I've defended this guy. I've gone to bat for this guy. In my first hot takes in late October, I said he was going for north of 70 points. I should have said north of 80 because the way that this guy is playing is absolutely insane right now. 48 points in 43 games right now in the Columbus Blue Jackets. Guys like Marchenko and Monahan are also playing very good, but Zach Werenski is definitely leading the charge from the blue line. 6'2", 250, not 50 pounds. The ideal, prototypical number 1 offensive defenseman that still is pretty good in his own zone. Zach Werenski has solidified. I already had him in my top 10 defensemen, but without a shadow of a doubt now, if you don't have Zach Werenski in your top 10 defensemen, you're out of your mind. And even last year, again, why I still had him in my top 50, he had 57 points in 70 games last year. Although I didn't expect 90-point pace or anything like that, on a bad Columbus team last year, he was hovering at around 65, 70-point pace. So Zach Werenski, put some damn respect on his name, and rightfully so. Our final 2, Kyle Connor at 27th. A monster season capped off last night by a natural hat trick in the first period. 23 goals, 32 assists, 55 points in 44 games right now. When looking at him last year, above half a goal per game. In prior years, he put up 47 goals. The ideal goal-scoring winger, speedy guy, very good skater. Every team wants a Kyle Connor. He checks in at number 26. And he's also much better defensively this year. I forgot to point that out, or I got to point that out. In previous years, he's been one of the worst defensive wingers in the entire NHL. He has been far more responsible in his own zone this season. Not Selke level by any stretch, but that definitely leads from him going from the mid-30s where I previously had him into the top 20s. And you could, if he finishes the year out with these kind of defensive numbers, probably going to be within the top 25. And I could definitely hear arguments for him being a top 20 player. And then lastly, at 26th, I am going with Roman Josi. The offense hasn't been as impressive as prior years, 85 points, 96 points in 2022, but that's kind of Nashville on the whole, similarly to Filip Forsberg. But yeah, he still has 28 points in 38 games. Still, the underlying numbers are some of the best offensive numbers by a defenseman, and he's pretty good defensively. You throw him on a different team this season, I have no doubts that he's going at around point per game pace. At 34, 35 years old, the way that he's still able to skate in a very, very high IQ playmaker, Roman Josi is still pretty easily a top 8 defenseman in the entire NHL. We don't have to massively overreact just because he's only on pace for 63 points instead of his normal point per game kind of dominance. Roman Josi, damn good player. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about this part 1 of my top 50 players in the entire NHL, 26 through 50. We'll probably do 11 through 25 either tomorrow or on Friday, and then eventually, je top 10. Let me know in the comments what do you think. I'll be seeing you next one.